Welcome back. Well, it's quickly become the most talked about book in Australia. Who Killed Channel 9 is the inside story of not just a television network, but a family dynasty.
The author knew Kerry Packer very well after being given the job of setting up 60 Minutes in Australia. His name is Gerald Stone, and he joins us now in the studio. Morning to you, Gerald.
Morning.
Good morning, Gerald.
Now, your book's title, Who Killed Channel 9, suggests that Channel 9 is dead, but is this one of the sort of Mark Twain moments where reports of the death have been gradually exaggerated?
Well, yeah, of course you'd have to say that because it's still transmitting, it's doing very well. It may well go on to win the ratings and make more money than Kerry Packer ever dreamed of. I'm talking about the kind of spiritual death of a channel that meant so much to many Australians and to people in the industry who worked there. A channel that was driven by a great passion, which came from Kerry Packer, and that certainly is the one that things did.
Sure.
How instrumental do you think was Kerry in running the network, and do you think his death has affected this greatly?
Well, it certainly has turned out that way. It shouldn't have happened that way, but Kerry was instrumental because he looked upon the network as a part of his ego, an extension of his ego. You know, you can't tell Kerry Packer's stories without using language that's not allowed on television. But he basically told people, I don't care what it takes, just do it and get it right. And that was a wonderful thing to have happen. Eventually his son took over, a different generation, and he looked upon television as a business, not as a passion. Yeah.
Well, I think everyone associates with that attitude of Packer Senior of just wanting to win at any cost. But I think many would say it did come at a cost to the network, that it may have been, you know, over-resourced and stuck in a bit of a business time warp.
It certainly was, and it was from the golden age when advertising revenue was pouring in, audiences were very big. Now, of course, there's intense competition from the internet and pay TV.
Yes.
There needed to be belt tightening, but it didn't need to be done with such a punitive effect. It was almost as if Channel 9 was being treated as enemy territory by PBL, the mother company.
Sure.
Yeah, and that is probably the gist of the book, is why did it happen?
Do you think the management shake-up was overdue, though? I mean, they've seen a few different CEOs, haven't they, in the past couple of years?
Well, Eddie McGuire was the sixth in a little over 4 years, the sixth managing director in a little over 4 years. So that shows the you know, the destabilization that occurred there. No, it didn't have to happen that way. I mean, a good example is Channel 7 and comparing the 7 network to the 9 network. Both of them had to go through belt-tightening processes, but everybody who deals with the 2 networks says 7 is full of morale, high-spirited, the big buzz around it, whereas 9 is a very demoralized station.
Well, we pinched our morale from Channel 9, of course.
Well, you could have. You could have.
For viewers, Gerald, what do you think this all means? I mean, obviously PBL Media is now being further sold down to a 25% stake now for the family holding anyway. But does it matter for viewers, really, who runs the network? What are the effects, the roll-on effects?
Yeah, I think that's why the story goes beyond Channel 9, because Kerry Packer was a fierce competitor, and as long as he was around, you could be sure that 9 would try to get the best in, and everybody would try to match them, and you'd have that sense of competition. Now we have 3 networks basically saying the same thing. We don't care if we're number 1 as long as we make money. And so I think it'll take people like you to really, you know, keep standards up, because it will be too easy for them to fall into a monopoly attitude.
I guess particularly with the production of local dramas and things, when you have the private equity firms who are based overseas anyway, they're probably not going to care so much for those expensive local dramas.
Well, they probably will spend $1 million on a Big Brother or Dancing with the Stars, you know, that type of big hit thing. But I think that eventually it may start to tell on news and current affairs, where it's expensive, it doesn't bring in that high an audience. That's where I think we have to, all of us, keep alert.
Now, your book is just selling out like hotcakes, really, isn't it? I mean, have you been surprised by that? It's #1 book in the country. Are you surprised?
Well, I'm the author. I'm the father and mother of it, so to speak. So I'm not surprised, but I was scared that people would see it as a media book.
Yes.
Where it's not just a media book. I mean, it has more drama in it than, you know, most dramas you'd see on television. It's conflict from the very top between the father and son of the Packers, right down to stars and so on.
So intimately entwined with the social history of Australia, really, that Packer dynasty, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And, you know, for generations, Australia watched it. Maybe not always always the best network, but at least it was the network that cared about what it did.
And people are already touting a screenplay of the book.
Yes.
Any truth to this rumour? And more importantly, who would play the big guy, Kerry Packer?
Well, the only one I can think of is dead. That was Lon Chaney Jr. And no, yes, there have been nibbles about film rights, and you can see why, because there's such conflict in the Packer dynasty and so on like that. It would probably be the Australian equivalent of Gone with the Wind, I suppose. In terms of
Indeed. I reckon you get David Wenham to play Kerry Packer. You put a ball cap on him, and he stacked on, 300 pounds. He'd look quite like Kerry Packer.
Yeah, not much work.
Maybe Bill Hunter and so on.
To play, John Alexander.
Yes. I think everybody cares about who George Clooney's going to play. That's the thing.
Oh,
yeah. I hope he plays the host of Deal or No Deal, that 5:30 game show that revolutionised the news.
Very handsome host.
Gerald Stone, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thanks very much, guys.
Thank you. And Gerald Stone's book has quickly become the #1 bestseller. It's called Who Killed Channel 9? You'll find it in bookstores everywhere.